Construction is changing the Calvary-Marta landscape at a rapid rate, and the latest developments have forced the closure of the traditional Edith Street entrance. A proposal to bring forward the demolition of the building that houses the emergency department has been approved, meaning major changes for the hospital's operations.
Well, the emergency department's one of our critical care departments, and whenever you sort of relocate that sort of activity, it's a major logistical nightmare.
For the first time in many decades, the hospital will have a single point of entry via Platt Street, a move that has its benefits. A new $1 million emergency department with more space, a special resuscitation bay and sophisticated monitoring equipment will be used until construction is completed.
It's far superior in terms of its functionality and safety for both patients and staff than what we currently have. So, we're looking forward to being able to effect this move tomorrow.
While congestion is expected in Platt Street in the coming months, parking is still available in the multi-level Platt Street car park and at the northern end of the campus off Villa Road. Lucy Wilson, NBN News.
It took only a few months to bring down more than 100 years of the city's history. Now Mirvac says its development will pay homage to that. Construction of the $190 million Stage 1 will see 146 units in 3 high-rises, retail space and a Siebel hotel, including a restaurant and bar complex.
The most iconic of those being a 16-storey tower, the range of buildings from 5 to 8 storeys around it, and a major public space.
A modified consent plan will be lodged with the state government next week that includes a green gas transformer to allow one of the high-rises to generate its own power. Stage 2 will include a design competition for an 18-storey building to be completed by 2012. All up, the project will cost $335 million, but Mirvac insists it's giving back to the city by creating a public square and access to the beach.
We've reduced the envelope potential development by about 20%.
The Lord Mayor believes the calibre of the penthouses and other apartments will help lift real estate values, with some set to sell for upwards of $2.5 million. Already there's been plenty of interest, not just locally but from Sydney and overseas as well.
It really indicates our underlying economic strength.
The project will be officially launched next month. Penny Evans, NBN News.
When the Army Reserve goes on a recruitment drive, it's not kidding. Its mission is simple but much harder to execute.
The single biggest challenge facing the Australian Defence Force in the coming decade is a people shortage.
And for the Hunter River Lancers, the role they play is paramount by being the only regiment within the reserve to boast training in the Bushmaster.
So that gives us the capacity to train our reservists up to deployability.
The Bushmaster plays a primary role in conflict by providing safe transport for our troops. Jacob Cutmore is yet to see combat, nonetheless was in a different sort of war zone this afternoon, navigating through suburban Maitland.
They can go anywhere, great capability. It was a good buy for the Army, I reckon. But yeah, very handy.
Trooper Cutmore is a graduate of a traineeship program already in place in Muswellbrook and being rolled out in Maitland and Newcastle.
Join the Army Reserve and do up to 16 weeks per year of service, but at the same time we offer them a full-time civilian traineeship in business administration, retail or stores and warehousing.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
It's a trolley bursting with goodness, no doubt, but will it break the budget? Dietitian Claire Collins is on a mission to get families eating better. She says despite fluctuating prices, fruit and vegetables are still affordable family staples.
Now $28, that's going to last a long time compared to something like, the 3 pizzas. You get that home delivered with, a couple of litres of coconut garlic bread and there's $28.
Price is one thing, but in health terms, there's no comparison. Dr. Collins says children especially need the goodness of green groceries.
We know that particularly vegetables and fruit is the single most important thing you can do to protect them from all the diseases you hear about, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease and even cancer.
Yeah, I'd rather them eat that than some of the processed foods and Yeah, you know, a packet of chips is not as good as a banana or an apple, and they love it.
And for those who don't...
Well, I think the main message is to never give up on getting them to try veggies and fruit.
Dr Collins will present more food and lifestyle tips as part of a series of family wellness forums hosted by HMRI from Wednesday.
When stunts like these can be pulled off, the stumbles along the way suddenly become worth it. And in the sport that started it all, skateboarding, a 14-year X Games veteran scored his first ever gold medal. Rune Glifberg, a 33-year-old from Denmark, made the breakthrough, doing so with a busted shoulder. Yes, the best laid plans mean nothing at the Summer X Games in Los Angeles, and when things go awry, they don't only go by the wayside, but up and over, and then some. Canadian rally driver Andrew Comrie Pickard is known as ACP, and TLC is all he'll receive, as will American Dave Mirra, who also came unstuck in his semi. The jump wasn't impossible, but near enough to it, as Travis Pastrana emerged to win the gold medal. But when this is the alternative, one has to ask, is it worth it? Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Three weeks ago, Edmundo Zura wasn't even on the Newcastle Jets' radar. This afternoon, the 24-year-old marksman was running around with the A-League club. Still feeling the effects of his journey to Australia, Zura has limited time to get up to speed on the Premier's style of play.
Crash course for Edmundo. There's a few positions still up for grabs, which we're still not 100% sure which way we're going to go.
Kaz Patafta will have a bit to say about that. Not only is he fighting for a spot, he's the unofficial club translator between the coach and their Spanish-speaking star player. Danish recruit Jasper Hawkinson has a good grip on both English and an attacking midfield role after turning heads during the weekend's match against Melbourne.
He looks like he's going to be a real asset for the club for the next 2 years, and who's going to really strike up a good partnership in that middle of the park area.
And how's this for a look? A-League Player of the Year and Golden Boot Joel Griffith sporting something of a hairdo. The fact he got through 90 minutes at the weekend after an ankle problem was what his coach really wanted to see. The race had already been stopped once because of rain. When it restarted, Craig Jones was one of those fighting for the lead when things went horribly wrong. Thrown from his machine, it was the impact of a following bike which appeared to do most of the damage. Race officials did. Jones was treated, then airlifted to hospital where he remains in a coma and in a critical condition. Parks was fourth when the race was ended to remain third overall on the riders' standings. It doesn't appear either of Newcastle's two Olympic softballers, Nat Ward and Belinda Wright, were affected by the ticketing scam reported earlier. The team leaves for Beijing on Wednesday. To the National Ice Hockey League, and the Newcastle North Stars have hit momentum at the right time of year, scoring 23 goals in just 2 games at the weekend. After beating Penrith 10-2, they backed it up with a 13-3 demolition of the Central Coast. In fourth overall on the ladder, the North Stars are shaping as a real threat once again with the finals approaching. It's the Clayton's home game for Parramatta's Michael Hagan, splitting his time between Newcastle and Sydney since taking on the Eels job. Tonight's match is literally just down the road from home, but turning up in Paragear at Newcastle for the first time will be different.
We've got a lot of time for the people at the club, and I think it will be a bit strange walking into the other coaching box and the home or the away sheds instead of the home sheds.
It will also be his 200th game as an NRL coach, but that takes a back seat to the job at hand. Both the Eels and Newcastle are clinging to the fringe of the 8, and while a loss wouldn't kill off finals hopes, it certainly wouldn't help.
Yeah, we probably think we've got to win 4 of our last 6, so, in there, I guess you're budgeting for a couple of losses, but, it would be nice to not budget for one this weekend.
Former Eel, now Knight, Zeb Taylor will have a bit to say about that. His confidence is at an all-time high as he revels in career-best form.
I reckon I can achieve heaps more if I just keep playing first grade and establishing myself and hopefully get to that next step.
That'll be music to Brian Smith's ears. Tonight's match, his 500th as a top-grade coach.
The learner driver, who was 17 at the time of the crash, initially lied about being behind the wheel when the car hit a telegraph pole, ripping it in two with fatal consequences. However, defence barrister John Booth argued the accused's tender age meant he may have lacked the responsibility to deal with the repercussions of the accident, and he has good chances of rehabilitation, adding that the plea was late, but he was now 18, he was now a father, and he wanted, in his own words, to end the pain, and that he continues to suffer mental and emotional injuries. Judge Coulihan questioned the offender's evidence, telling the court, "I accept that he lied in his statement. His behaviour thereafter was that of a coward." The accused defence pleaded with Judge Coulihan to accept the man's contrition and remorse. He said that the offender wanted to speak to other young men to explain that being a hoon ends in death to your friends, that he wanted to make good in some small way the damage he'd done to the community and his friends. The Crown argued the offender assumed responsibility as soon as he took the keys, offering only a 10% discount for the guilty plea and an automatic 3-year disqualification from driving. He is due to be sentenced on August 22nd. Penny Evans, NBN News.
A council meeting isn't their hangout of choice, but to skateboarders across Lake Macquarie, what this motley crew represented last night was definitely very cool. After years of pushing for a skate park in Swansea, they were relieved when council staff recommended the project be given the thumbs up. But not everyone was thrilled with the decision.
The soccer club is growing in numbers of teams and stuff. They have been promised a future amenities clubhouse building. And these are the more urgent things for this site, first and foremost.
Tully Baxter agrees the city needs a skate facility, but believes Lake Macquarie should look south for inspiration and build an indoor park like the one at Tuggerah.
You're not worried about the late night loitering and the other undesirable element that can be attracted to these sort of things.
Advocate of the skate park, Councillor Rob O'Brien, says it's about time Lake Macquarie's youth were given a fair go.
Kids currently ride at Macca's or Coles, up around shops at the school. They know it's illegal, however they've got no other choice.
There will be a public site inspection on Thursday before councillors make their final decision on Monday. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
From spectacular snowy landscapes to world-class vineyards and pristine beaches, the Hunter seems to have it all. Tourism operators are hoping locals agree. They're now relying on more people to holiday in their own backyard as high petrol prices eat into travel budgets.
Right now we have a $500,000 campaign for the Barrington Tops in market, and that came out of federal funding last year, and that is targeted at the Newcastle area. So all around town you'll see buses and billboards out there promoting the Barrington Tops.
But NRMA's Carl Loade says more needs to be done.
Well, NRMA believes that we need an urgent campaign to promote tourism in the Hunter region, and certainly we do need to focus on our local markets.
The NRMA found 54% of those surveyed said petrol prices were impacting on their holiday plans. 61% were changing their destinations closer to home, and 60% were cutting back on holiday spending.
Now, they're really terrible statistics for tourism in the Hunter region, because obviously when people are spending less, that's less money going into our local businesses.
And to cope with the low season and petrol panic, Hunter Valley Wine Country tourism operators are offering discounts and fuel vouchers until the 31st of August. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
For years, Australia's most notorious pest has invaded high-profile events. In 1997, he disrupted the World Cup qualifier in Melbourne, and at the 2000 Games ran onto the path of the men's marathon. He's also clashed with model Sarah Murdoch at a Brisbane fashion show, and last night he struck again, jumping the fence at Energy Australia Stadium. It's the third time Peter Hall has stormed a Knights game. Newcastle Knights CEO Steve Burriston issued a media statement today saying, "We will continue to work with police to stop this happening, but this troubled individual will continue to work out ways to put other lives at risk. And the NRL has had enough."
Because this particular character is a serial offender, we'll be banning him for life from all venues.
Hall's been charged with assault and entering a playing field without authority and will appear before Newcastle Local Court later this month. Madeline Bond, NBN News. For many women, a love of food and lack of exercise is killing them. Australia now has the second highest rate of obese women in the world, and it's causing all sorts of problems.
It's starting to affect people's health at quite young ages, so we're seeing hypertension and heart disease that we might normally only see in people in their 50s and 60s. We're starting to see that in people in their 30s.
And the impact of the obesity epidemic could be felt by our children and grandchildren.
There's a possibility that all of the gains in life expectancy that we've seen over recent generations might actually be reversed.
The data has come out of a 12-year HMRI study into women's health. It's also revealed the most popular pharmaceutical drugs women are taking are to treat depression.
I think that we need to be thinking about mental health as a health issue at a community level, as a priority health problem.
The research also found arthritis is the most common disease for women over 70, that elderly women who drink alcohol in moderation are healthier than those who abstain, and that exercise doesn't help with menopausal symptoms. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It wasn't that long ago Mark Tafua would play Newcastle Club Rugby on Saturday and return home to watch the Knights on television. These days, he's making the highlights. Only in his second season, Tafua's confidence and form have been on the rise at the right time, given he's off contract. Hopeful of remaining at Newcastle, a return to rugby in Japan or France is a growing possibility, given the soon-to-be 27-year-old is also a soon-to-be dad.
I'm not going to turn my back on anything. I'm going to keep my options open and take whatever's there. But at the end of the day, I've got to look after myself and my family. So
a spot in the Samoan World Cup team would be the perfect shop front.
Make my dad proud. Like, he was there last night and I seen him after the game. So to play for Samoa would make him very proud, make my mum proud as well.
Injury has limited the game time of Steve Simpson this season, but his wrecking ball runs last night must have left a few Eels players feeling sick and sorry today. A try to round out the night reward for his effort.
And it was a credit to Simo just how dominant he was. The way he carried the ball tonight and smashed some blokes. Awesome.
This the only sour note, with Zeb Taylor suffering a medial ligament tear which could sideline him for the rest of the regular season. Along with his guitar and a ton of strapping tape, Matthew Helm is ready to take on the world.
And that's sort of just for me at the moment, because I tend to go through a lot of that because I'm, getting a little bit older now. I've got to hold my body together.
His confidence is another thing. To listen to him, Helm doesn't sound like the man who smashed the field to win Commonwealth gold 2 years ago, or won world gold and silver medals. But given these games are his swan song, all that experience will be worth plenty on the platform against the might of the Chinese.
They're going to be really tough to beat, and especially on their home soil, but they're human beings as well, and I've beat them on their home soil before, so I just got to really go into that competition and focus on myself.
Helm will compete in the 10-metre individual and 10-metre synchro events, with competition to begin on Sunday.
It was one of Newcastle's most beautiful buildings, but after years of disuse and neglect, the old Newcastle Post Office is covered in graffiti, rubbish and home to squatters. During their final active meeting before elections, Newcastle City councillors last night voted to take the building's owners, Van New International, to the Land and Environment Court to try and force them to secure and protect the iconic structure.
A case will need to be put together. Council will then go to court with that case. This is not unlike the action that we've taken against the Empire Hotel.
Councillors are also calling on the Minister for Planning and Heritage to take action against the owner. Keith Parsons says he's disgusted the building's been left to rot.
I've seen people actually jumping the fence and getting into the building, so there are obviously squatters still there. It's an indictment on the owner, really, that they've not acted on their development approval.
You wonder what their bona fides are in terms, are they ever really going to do a development, or are they just waiting for the value to build up and then put it on the market?
Developer Sean New couldn't be reached for comment. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It all began when a teacher at Hunter River High School stuck up their hand for a vacant position in the mathematics department at Tomaree, only to be told the job would be advertised. Under the old system, the teacher would have been given a priority transfer. Today, colleagues from both schools rallied in support.
This is a non-negotiated imposed system of employing teachers through interview. And yes, that we're indicating as Federation members that we are not happy.
We feel that we're not being listened to, that we're not having an input into the decision-making process.
Tomorrow the protests continue, with teachers at Irrawang Public School meeting with union representatives. And parents be warned there's more stop work action to come.
We want to see people who have worked in hard-to-staff schools or worked in any other schools be given credit for their service. So it's just a fight that we have to have and we have to persevere with.
Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
Some people have said that that's ridiculous and what you're doing is ridiculous, but that's me. I just aim high and go for it because there's a lot of people out there who need the support.
This is how many country music fans will remember Reg Lindsay. 64 records, hundreds of singles, 3 golden guitars, a star both here and in the US. In the 1960s, he became the first Australian to be recognised on Nashville's Walkway of Stars.
He developed a career which spanned 40 years. He went all over Australia as one of the classic touring outfits.
Not bad for a stockman from Adelaide whose passion for music stemmed from being given a harmonica at age 2. For 12 years, he delighted Australian television audiences with his 2 variety shows, the Reg Lindsay Country Hour and Reg Lindsay Country Homestead.
He had wonderful star quality, charisma. You could walk into a room and all the attention would all of a sudden move to Reg, and he was a great personality, and certainly he'll be sorely missed by everyone in country music.
He was heavily involved in the rodeo scene, with Cessnock in the Hunter Valley holding an annual event in his honour. Today, the Australian Bushmen's Camp Draft and Rodeo Association described him as a great Australian and a great friend to rodeo. After suffering an aneurysm in 1995 at the Tamworth Country Music Festival, Reg retired from the spotlight to deal with ongoing health problems. His family was by his side when he passed away yesterday.
After more than a month on the sideline, Matt Hilder gave his injured thumb its first serious hit out today in a bid to see game time against his former club.
Probably won't be fully healed, but if it's close enough, then it should be strong enough.
North of the border, the Titans will be without dual international Matt Rogers after the club decided not to defend the 5'8" against a charge of attacking the head of Melbourne's Steve Turner. Coach John Cartwright admits he has a battle on his hands getting his players to believe in themselves again, and Rogers' absence won't help.
It's a massive loss, you know. We have to play a totally different type game when Matty's not there.
The Titans have been crippled by injury, but Nathan Friend and Mark Minicello could return against the Knights.
We've named them in the hope that they're going to be 50-50. We'll give them as long as we can.
Former Titan Hilda is keen to catch up with his old mates, but says he's more interested in tasting the atmosphere at Skilled Park.
I'm sort of pretty keen to play that new ground they got. That's about it. Like, it's just another game. I don't get too attached to former clubs or anything. So just another game, mate.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
We're going to be playing great teams and some great players like the likes of Messi and Riquelme, so should be fantastic for me, even though I'm going to be on the sideline. And
Renovations are revving up on what will be an Australian first. Opening in late October, the centre will house staff involved in clinical trials and 2 specialist counsellors for those with prostate cancer.
Nothing is provided at the minute to tell you what to expect before you are treated or after you're treated, and many men go into deep depression because of this.
The state government today handed over $450,000, which will pay for the counsellors for the next 3 years, while prostate cancer survivor Jeff Fry has been the driving force.
Originally, the Prostate Survival Alliance started with a grant of $1 million from Jeff Fry, who's now our secretary. Then this cost us $800,000, and guess who underwrote that? Jeff Fry did it again.
Meanwhile, the first of 2 public meetings about the federal government's GP super clinics was held last night in Wonji to identify local priorities. Another meeting is being held at Nelson Bay tonight. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Three months after the controversial cab charge system was installed in Newcastle taxis, and the problems keep coming. There's now concern drivers' safety is being jeopardised because cabbies are having trouble logging onto the system.
If a driver does have a problem and activates his security alarm, then if he's not logged into the system, then it probably won't activate at the base. So, and they don't know where he is. If he's not logged into the system, their GPS-based system.
Ms Sharman says it also means any incidents won't be recorded because in-car security cameras won't be on. And that's not all. The failing system could cost Stephen Hobbins his wheelchair-accessible taxi driver licence. In accordance with Ministry of Transport regulations, Stephen's car has to operate for at least 10 hours every day. But because he couldn't log on to the system last week, there's no record of his hours, therefore breaching his licence conditions. He's now had to prove to the ministry that he was behind the wheel.
I then sent them back all of my dockets, all the docket numbers and all the times that I did. Now this involves time and paperwork.
And there's nothing stopping it from happening again. The system isn't only leaving passengers stranded and costing drivers fares, it's putting an increasing number of operators out of business.
Taxis that have been sold because of these problems, and I must say they're being sold at a loss.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
While some regional airports are struggling to stay open, Newcastle Airport continues to grow. Passenger numbers are now over 1 million a year and growing by 20% annually. And to meet the demand, another terminal extension is about to get underway.
We've just received approval and to accept tenders to build a new $4.5 million extension of our terminal, basically to enhance our check-in area, which is now under significant pressure because of the growth here at the airport.
Despite fuel prices reducing profitability in the airline industry, the airport is pushing ahead with major work to meet the demand of expected growth.
At the moment we have about $18 million worth of work planned for this financial year, including the airport extension, but also more car parking again, improving our aircraft parking facilities, introduction of a stronger IT backbone for the airport.
And the latest figures suggest that the airport's success is rubbing off on the entire regional economy.
Certainly the airport is very much structured as an economic driver for the region. This year we're seeing about $460 million worth of economic benefit flowing through annually to the region, and that's supporting about 3,200 jobs in the region.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. For the last year, Ultrafloor at Rutherford has made a concerted effort to be more environmentally friendly. They're recycling water, using forklifts more efficiently and cutting power usage.
Sustainability is the buzzword at the moment, and that's with good reason. And we saw considerable savings for the business, which indeed have now been realised.
One of the most effective changes has been made in the process of cutting concrete beams used in their flooring system. They now saw the concrete at the optimal time when it's not too hard. That means they use less energy, water, and don't go through so many of the expensive blades.
It's not rocket science, it's just applying good common sense to your business.
Newcastle company Advotech provides the technical and engineering advice.
We're working with some 50 to 100 companies currently on environmental initiatives with the DECC, and basically our role is to assist companies to look at internal improvements.
And Ultrafloor is already reaping plenty of rewards. By cutting its water, gas and energy bills, this Hunter company is not only helping the environment but also improving its bottom line. So far they've saved around $70,000 in 1 year. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Sometimes a picture says it all. These are extreme cases, but highlight the dental risks we all face, especially as we age. That's why dentists want to get the so-called caring generation, people aged between 30 and 50, back in the chair before it's too late.
And many of us are carers for children or adults and grandparents, so it's making sure they get good dental care as well.
Dr Chaw says this group is particularly susceptible to tooth decay and gum disease. And with busy lifestyles, they don't always give dental hygiene the attention it requires.
Make sure you get regular dental care, that's number one. Drink water instead of sugared drinks is another important thing. A healthy diet without frequent snacking is important.
And of course, brush and floss twice a day. Despite a significant reduction in tooth decay in the past 3 decades, especially in children, there continues to be a stubbornly high level of oral disease in adults. During Dental Health Week, Hunter New England Health is spreading the message to make dental care a priority.
Dental decay is preventable, and I think a lot of people don't think of it as that. They think of it as an inherited disease, but it is preventable.
And as always, prevention is better than a potentially painful and expensive cure.
Not since Parkley Markets, whose owner also backs the Jets, has a major sponsor graced the playing strip of Newcastle. But given the grand final win, it was a punt Centrebet just couldn't pass up.
Certainly a catalyst, because we like to associate ourselves with a champion. Newcastle have worked very hard to be the champion club.
The announcement comes 8 days from season kickoff.
We're always on the end of some criticism, but we take our time and hopefully at the end of the day we get it right.
It's for one season, including the Asian Cup campaign with an option to extend beyond 12 months. Training facilities and coaching development are among areas to be invested in, while the money also buys confidence.
It gives them a real sense of credibility within the team and within the whole football club.
As for the players, they've got their own ideas on how to make the sponsorship worth their while.
$100 free bet. Could be a good start.
Maybe for man of the matches, a few maybe some vouchers for having a bet on a weekend. I'd love that.
They'd also love to see Marquis Edmundo in action. He's still waiting for an FFA clearance to play.
It's really sad being the bench because he always wants to be playing and wants to be score goals.
Passionate coaches can bring out the best in young athletes, so imagine what the captain of the Australian women's soccer team can do.
On your marks, get set, go!
Cheryl Salisbury is helping primary school students at Windale hone their soccer skills and notch up thousands of steps on pedometers. And while the Matildas missed out in qualifying, Cheryl's supporting these kids in their Beijing campaign.
It's about being a team and all joining together and trying to get as many steps as you can to get to Beijing and back.
The students tally their jumps, skips and hops at the end of each session. Each school needs a total of 600,000 steps to walk to Beijing and back.
I think the Active After School Care is a great program. I mean, obviously sport is a big culture here in Australia, and to get the kids active after school instead of going home and playing computer games and sitting on the couch watching TV, it's a great idea.
74 Hunter schools and 3,500 primary students are taking part. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Opening ceremony celebrations began almost at daybreak in Newcastle with a distinctly Chinese flavour. A yum cha breakfast was held at the Hexham Bowling Club for the occasion and also to mark the completion of its multi-million-dollar redevelopment. At Wheeler Place, the soft martial art of Tai Chi was on display.
As the Australian Tai Chi Institute representatives, we've all come down as part of the Centre of Newcastle to offer our support to our amazing athletes.
But last night, pre-Olympic activities were a little more political in the city, with a candle lighting ceremony held in Civic Park. This small group doing their bit to help raise awareness and protect the Tibetan people's culture and language. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The Sacred Heart Cathedral was packed last night. Among those in the 500-strong congregation were abuse survivors, their families and supporters, all waiting to hear the same thing. The bishop described the abuse as a repulsive crime and said that the church would act in a more compassionate way towards victims and vowed to bring those responsible to justice. It was a relief to families most directly affected.
I think it's restored the hope for us and also hope for other survivors that, basically other survivors, when they do come forward now, the door will be open and someone's there to listen. Whereas we sort of didn't have that type of acknowledgement back then.
People expressed their feelings by carrying olive branches to the altar, but those in the church who work with victims know the abuse won't magically stop.
If we're going to control it in the church, we have to acknowledge that it happens in the church, and that's a step towards stopping it.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
So we've got a new roof over us, all new office spaces, but we've also been able to move our community services office up from down on the corner of King and Union. That's in here with us now.
Banama, Naramba, Garing, Guru, Mikan, Kuba.
The Warramai people of Port Stephens are reconnecting with the shifting sands of Stockton Bight. There is evidence that they've inhabited these dunes for 15,000 years and are now re-engaging with their traditional land in a way not seen since Europeans all but destroyed their way of life a century and a half ago.
It's wonderful to have our land back, to see the future for our children. We never left this land never left us.
A documentary made by Newcastle filmmaker Ian Hamilton highlights the return to the land and shows how the partnership between the Warramai people and the state government has allowed continuing access for everyone at the same time as bringing employment and income to the traditional owners.
A lot of the culture here in Port Stephens has been lost, and I think it's just one way to learn is back on your lands. How can we learn in a kitchen or in a lounge room sitting around the table? There's only one way to learn is back out there and on the lands with the elders.
There are plans for several public screenings of the film. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
There's been little doubt that the 24-year-old Ecuadorian would make an impact at Newcastle, but you're never quite sure until you see it for yourself. Just a few minutes into an internal trial match today, and Edmundo Zura scored. He's shown touches of class and was a real presence on the pitch, but the coach knows this is a real work in progress, given he's only been here a week.
He's still not au fait with the way that we defend without the ball, so that's obviously going to take a little bit of time, but when he has got the ball and we just played the game, I think we've scored 3 goals, he scored 2.
Not good news for fellow international signing Jasper Hawkinson, who spent today's trial on the physio table. A calf tear has him in doubt for the A-League opener.
I think he's 50-50. Next week we'll start to look to see if he can run. We haven't looked to see if he can run yet.
As for the squad, which will be without Ollie Roos, Jade North and James Holland for the opening match, there's work to be done.
It's
what we can do for the club in the future. You know, it's the foundations again, putting foundations down for another level to go to. And having Centrebet on side now, I think you find there'll be other clubs, other sponsors that will come on board. They won't be as big as Centrebet, but I think they're looking very promising. As a club, you always find ways of spending money. Spending money is not an issue. It's how to make it, that's the issue.
Con, is the playing roster full?
Very close to it, very good, very pleased with the recruit. We lost 3 or 4 boys last year, but I think we've done very well this year.
Are all the affairs at the stadium in place? Is the grass cut and dry?
Not completed yet. We haven't signed the dotted line, but I can tell you now there have been talks in place and it's looking very promising.
As athletes gathered on Games Eve, Princess Mary was one of many to offer her support, and Merryweather's Richie Campbell made sure he got a keepsake of their meeting. On Sunday, he'll be in the pool for Australia against Greece in their opening game, before the underdog Aussies face some superpowers of the sport.
They look at us as a threat, but not so much, which actually helps us out a lot. Like, you know, we're the dark horse, so if they take us lightly, that's even better for us.
A touch of Beijing came to Hexham today. The bittersweet memories of the 1984 Los Angeles Games came flooding back for the then Hockeyroos captain Robin Leggett, who still rides every play.
You get very teary when you watch the opening ceremonies and you remember the smiles and remember the good times and sometimes you remember the not so good times.
The current crop of Olympians now get to experience that for themselves.
The 8th of the 8th, 08. It's a wedding anniversary difficult to forget.
Absolutely, we can't forget it now. Definitely not.
But it's also the perfect date for those wanting to be lucky in love. Chris and Melissa joined 95 other couples tying the knot in New South Wales, a large number of them from the Chinese community. And now if you're at 6s and 7s about the significance of the date, the word for the number 8 in China is ba, and sounds like the word for prosperity or wealth, which is pronounced fa. The number also has a perfect symmetrical shape, which is also considered a good omen. But this couple chose the date for a few different reasons.
Our anniversary is the 8th of October and Chris's birthday is the 8th of December, and when we booked the wedding we were the 8th wedding to be booked, so it just seemed like there was no escaping the 8th.
11 couples said I do at special ceremonies held in Newcastle today. At the John Hunter Hospital, a baby destined for big things came into the world at 8:56 this morning.
Yeah, I understand that is a lucky number, so yeah, happy for it to, or Misha to arrive on 8th of the 8th.
And while little Misha didn't quite weigh 8 pounds, Mum Corinne was just happy to have a healthy bub, and that was lucky enough. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's the tranquil beauty of the Wollombi Valley many residents fear could be lost if the area is mined for gas.
It would be very damaging to the community. It would impact on tourism and all the local businesses, and we think that it would fracture the community to such an extent that the community would in fact die.
Earlier this week, Sydney Gas began drilling the first of 2 core holes in the valley, looking for a coal seam methane gas field. The 10-metre high rig is drilling 1.2 kilometres down and extracting coal core samples. In 2 months, the drill will be moved to this paddock to look for gas. At this stage, the company says it's only exploring the region for a commercially viable supply of the energy resource.
Everybody seems to be suddenly leaping to the conclusion that we'll have a huge production field here. I wish that were the case. That'd be really good, but I don't think that's very likely.
But the Wollombi community doesn't agree. Today they met to discuss what they see as a very real threat to the valley, which was listed as a conservation area by the National Trust back in 1977.
We formed a group called Wollombi Valley Against Gas Extraction. We didn't form a group called Wollombi Valley Against 2 core holes. The core holes aren't the issue. 2 core holes are a minor inconvenience. It's what follows that.
Presumably, if they're investing the $2 million that it costs them to drill these 2 holes, they would be looking for some sort of return.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
An X-ray tomorrow will ultimately decide if Scott Prince can return early from a broken arm sustained during Origin, but until then, Titans coach John Cartwright is happy to keep everyone guessing.
I haven't even mentioned Princey or Jordan Rankin, that's all speculation.
Brian Smith admits he's intrigued by all the byplay, but it won't actually change a thing as far as Newcastle's concerned.
If Prince comes back early and he hasn't played for 6 weeks, we'll be running plenty of traffic at him. If they play the young fellow making his debut, we'll be running plenty of traffic in the same spot.
And much of it will come in the shape of the human wrecking ball, Steve Simpson.
Well, if you watched Steve Simpson last week, I don't think you'd be looking forward to it.
Kurt Gidley has enjoyed a mini break this week, resting a battered body as Newcastle pushes for 3 straight wins, something they haven't done all season.
South have strung 5 together there through the year, and plenty of other teams have strung a few together, so it's disappointing in a way, but hopefully we can change that this week.
Winger Akila Uarte remains in doubt for Monday's game, with Cooper Vuna on standby for him.
For this limousine driver, it couldn't be more simple. Millions of tonnes of water flows out of Sydney's ocean outfalls every week. So Joe wants to build the world's largest water recycling plant on the former BHP site in Newcastle and harvest the wasted water by using bulk carriers.
Up to 5 million tonnes a week.
This docking system means the ships would never have to enter the port, so it wouldn't affect coal loading.
It will need a lot of money, but the returns will be worth it.
Once filtered, Joe believes the water could be piped all over the region back to Sydney or even transported by rail across New South Wales in times of need.
This will drought-proof the entire state, every town. If a train can carry 9,000 tonnes of coal, it can also carry 9,000 tonnes of water.
But why stop there? Joe says a pipeline should be built between the Hunter and the Murray-Darling Basin to boost the dying rivers and stop the government having to buy out irrigators.
Keep the land producing and there'll be enough water for environmental flows also.
However, the grand idea is yet to get much of a response from Canberra, if only Joe could find someone with a chequebook to match his dreams.
All I'd like is some people to look at these figures here, and that will astound anyone. They have to do something. There's got to be a plan.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
He's a boy, so it's a man's game. So I just got to make sure I'm comfortable in my mind that I'm not doing the wrong thing by him. So.
Win, lose or draw today, Broadmeadow couldn't be knocked off top spot and were awarded the minor premiership before kick-off. It's the major title they want to complete the collection, but they'll have to fix the radar first. Even the league's golden boot, Peter Haynes, couldn't find that magic touch in the first half. That all changed in the second, Doug West denied only by the woodwork. And from a corner, Haynes stood tall to head the home side in and take a 1-0 lead. Azzurri's season was now very much on the line. Sitting precariously on the fringe of the top four, they needed at least a draw to keep a hold of a final spot. The saviour coming just minutes from time, care of a Kyle Hawthorne free kick, which took a deflection and caught the net. The 1-1 draw earning them a point, enough to eliminate Phoenix and keep their own premiership dream alive.